participants increasing. I love that. When I see the numbers going up, I have this imaginary view of people entering a room and we're all seeing each other and talking to each other. Well, but that's not the case. This is our webinar series, Be Strong Families webinar series, staying strong and positive for ourselves and our children. And we've been going at it daily in both English and Spanish since March 23rd of last year. So we're delighted to welcome you here today and would love it if when you come in, you would open your chat and then go to the bottom where it says to and select all panelists and attendees. That's real important for going forward. And then just say hi and where you're joining from. Hi, Juan Massey from DC. I'm Kathy and I'm in Evanston, Illinois. And I'm looking out my window and it is snowing and it's 12 degrees outside, which is not my happy place. Good morning, Redding, California. Hi, Leah. Probably a lot nicer in Redding, California. And Emily, welcome, welcome. Good to see you here. Hi, Julie from Wisconsin. It's freezing, not going outside. I get that totally. Hi, Yolanda, and it's cold in Redding too. Deanne from sunny California, rubbing it in. It's not sunny here either. I don't like that. I guess that's because it's snowing, so it's like the sky is just one big gray color. Lovey, welcome, Lovey, in snowy, cold Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have a sister in Pittsburgh. Nice to see you all. We're going to get started in about, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. Because we like to start on time, but we don't want to start before time because that doesn't seem quite fair. We have about 90 people registered today. Who knows how many of them will be able to join. But we're here, sunny and warm yesterday, cold and rainy today. Hi, Daisy, working from home in southern New Jersey at the Foundation for Delaware County. Good morning, Las Vegas. We have Anna from Las Vegas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And pretty much most of you are doing as I asked and selecting all panelists and attendees. But if you would just do me the favor of double checking to make sure that you have clicked the second one, that would be helpful. Although we're going to get started. It's 12 o'clock. Jahira's in the background making everything run smoothly. And I'm here today with Tunga Otis from Mississippi, where it is storming. I know because she told me that and her internet is spotty. So hopefully Tunga will be able to have a decent connection. If not, she has tons of slides and they're pretty self-explanatory. So I'm gonna like pick it up if she has to drop it for a minute. But the topic today is making literacy a family thing. Hi, Elda, and hi, Pam. So let's go to the next slide and remind everybody about the ways to engage. There are two ways. The first one you're already using, which is the chat, and we'd like it if you address it to all panelists and attendees. And then the second one is you can raise your hand to speak if you feel so moved. And in that case, Jahira will unmute you, then you'll unmute yourself, and then we will be able to hear you. So without further ado, just want to go over our agreements for today. This is in recognition that we co-create this safe space together. So if you agree that you are willing to comply with all of these three things that we have over here, if you could just type I agree in the chat, that would be great. Like Lawan did, like Pamela. Yep, Lovey. Let's see it start rolling. The I agrees. That's almost like getting you up and doing a little dance here. Okay, awesome. Tunga, it's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for all the wonderful content that you provide on these webinars. Let's move to the next slide and I'll turn it over to Tunga, hopefully.
Thank you, Kathy. Being from Mississippi, rainy and the temperature is dropping. And Kathy, I think it's around 12 degrees. I think this weekend we'll hit around 12 degrees in southern Mississippi.
Really?
So it's going to reach down here for us.
Southern
yes.
You're going to get to 12 degrees?
Yes. Yes, in southern Mississippi, right. I think it's an ice storm in northern Mississippi right now, so we're finally getting our wintry weather. But thank you so much for having me back today. You know, last week I was here and I started my series, Every Home is a University and Families Are the Teachers. And today, last week I talked about reading to and with children, and that is truly one of my favorites. Today I'm going to talk about literacy, and more importantly, talk about what we can do to make it a family thing. So next slide. Now, I am a firm believer that literacy begins at home. And I don't know if everybody out there, what your position is, if you're an educator or if you work with families, but I'm sure you're tasked with the role of assisting families as they support and nurture their children's literacy and language skills. So in this session, we're going to look at ways to help those families. And, you know, if you have children that you love, children at home, children that you work with and engage with, hopefully these will help you too. So let's go to the next slide. So our agenda, I'm going to just basically talk about what's literacy. We're going to also talk about early literacy for those that have younger children around. We'll talk about some of the components of both, and then we'll share some tips and ideas. And I really would appreciate it if everybody would chime in. These are just some of mine, some of the ideas and tips that I have, but I would love it if everybody would kind of chime in and share some ideas with the group. So next slide. So what's literacy? You know, literacy is just plain and simple, the foundation for reading and writing, communication, and socializing. And when it comes to literacy, it's a lifelong journey. And we've got to start early when it comes to helping children along this journey. Next slide. So some of the things, I know this is a lot of teacher stuff right here. I just really want to focus on some of these concepts: the reading, the writing, the listening, the speaking, vocabulary, sight words, phonics, spelling. All of these are parts of literature. And these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today for different ages. So next slide. And we'll be also talking about early literacy. And early literacy is just basically what children know about reading and writing before they can read or write. So it's those things like letter knowledge and print awareness, vocabulary, print motivation, phonological awareness, and narrative skills. All of those things are parts of early literacy. And what's so wonderful about it when working with children, it's just simple. All we have to do is read to them, talk to them, sing with them, help them to write with them, and play with them every day. So we'll be talking about those as well. So please, for those, when it comes to anything that we're talking about today, please chime in. Next slide. So today we'll be sharing the tips and ideas. So let's go to the next slide. So throughout the day and throughout the home, there are so many different opportunities where we can play and practice literacy skills. You know, it might be that you're talking with the child about what makes you laugh. You might be walking in your neighborhood. You might be looking at signs while you're driving along the highway. You might be reading a book, telling jokes. All of these add up to literacy and language activities for children. And you do not need any worksheets or any flashcards to do it. Next slide. So literacy is everywhere, and all families need to do is just to kind of be cognizant about literacy. They need to be a role model first and foremost. Your children, they learn from your example. So we need to have the children see us reading and writing in different ways in our daily lives. We also need to, as families, provide them with materials. We need to offer them help. We need to take an interest in what they're doing and be intentional. Also, we need to take the time and use those teachable moments that pop up during the day. Okay, next slide. So first of all, print-rich environment. We need to have a print-rich environment at home. And I know a lot of people think labeling everything. No, that's not it. When I'm talking about print-rich or literacy-rich environment, I mean we're environments where children have many different opportunities to interact with different forms of print and a lot of different forms of language. You know, it might be a picture that they drew and you hung it, before you hung it up, you labeled some of the things that were on the pictures. It might be a cozy place where they can curl up and read a book, or you all can read a book together. It might be some games that you play together that promote literacy, or it could just be just a time to share a book. Next slide. Home library. You know, I think they say that the single most significant factor influencing a child's early educational success is an introduction to books and being read to at home prior to beginning school. So the thing about books is you can't read them if you don't have any books to read. You can't write if you don't have anything to write on or write with. So we need to have some things in our homes that can help assist with literacy. And one of them is books. But let's get books. In the chat box, can anybody share any places where they've gotten books that they could have for their children at home? And what about you, Kathy? Where did you find your books?
I'm a big book person. So I buy a lot of books for myself. Excuse me. And when I was when my child was young, I also had a lot of books around. I mean, I know a lot of people, I don't know if we went to the library as much as we probably should have. I think I did that a little bit later when he was a little bit older. Like when he was a very young child, I didn't get a lot of books from the library. But also friends, like we shared books with each other. You know, I would find a good book, and then, you know, we'd kind of like informally swap, because, you know, partially was for self-preservation, because when kids are very little, they like hearing the same book over and over and over again. And it was like after like the 10th time of reading that one as a bedtime story, like I would want a different story. So sharing with friends and family. Used bookstores, Julie says, secondhand stores, garage sales. Deanne says Scholastic. I know some purchase book for a grandson that's 1 year old from a dollar store, Lawan says. Yeah, supermarkets and dollar stores. Also, just sometimes there's like an annual book sale. Like there are different like fairs, you know, in Chicago that will have like children's books that are available and inexpensive. Scholastic parties like Usborne.
And I am a big person on going to the garage sales and thrift stores. When I was a teacher, that's what I would fill my classroom library with, all those books. Like, if you can get a book for 25 cents, I'm gonna get every book you have if it's for 25 cents. So that's why I got a lot of my books from.
I also got hand-me-downs. Like, just like we got hand-me-down clothes, I got hand-me-down clothes. I got some hand-me-down books too, like from my sister-in-law, or when her children got older, you know, her children were a little older, so that she would hand me down what they were done reading, you know, which was helpful.
Yeah. And then having a place in the home where you have those books. In the picture on the slide, that's a wonderful little library, but everybody can't have a little space like that. And I just want to show you one idea that we used to use, is to take this dish rack and just put the books in the dish rack, and it becomes like a little library. And I'm always a proponent of, If you're going to keep the books or something, maybe put it inside the book, the property of, with the name of the child, so they can have a sense of ownership. So
Donna says Dolly Parton Book Club will send your child a book a month.
yes, that's a great source. Okay, next slide. Another thing that I just love, I love using the chalkboard walls and the magnetic walls for literacy. You know, it's a place where children can express themselves. They can practice their writing, their drawing. It's good for their spatial awareness, their hand-eye coordination. Doesn't take up any space. It keeps them from, you know, destroying your painted walls. And there's something about that vertical writing that's really good for kids. And if you don't, you're not able to, purchase that chalkboard paint or that magnetic paint, maybe you can just get some paper and tape that paper or posters, butcher paper or posters on the wall, and they can use that. Next slide. Sticky note conversations. Instead of telling a child something at home, why don't you just leave a message or some instructions for your child on a sticky note, and then have them send some conversation back to you on the sticky note as well. And I see where someone mentioned the dry erase ones, and those are fantastic as well. Next slide. And throughout the house, why don't you just add some words throughout the house? Just for example, on this slide is some stairs. And on the stairs, they might have some sight words. They might have some rhyming words. So every time they go up another step, they might start with cat, then they might go to hat and bat, or it might be their sight words they have to learn, their spell words, any kind of words that they need to know, or they might need to, you might just say, for instance, hide some words throughout the house, and when they find those words, they have to identify them. Any kind of fun activity like that.
Deanne says easels are great too. I think this was the magnetic wall comments. And Donna says, my students love dry erase boards. You can get one at Dollar Tree. It comes with a board and a marker. So. Right.
And they love playing teacher with it anyway. They love that. I Spy, classic I Spy games. You can still play I Spy, but you might want to put more of a literacy twist in it, and you might give them some conceptual hints. And instead of saying I spy with my little something that begins with M, you might want to say I spy something with my little eye that starts with a and you can drink it and let them guess that. So you can do something like that. Next slide. Indoor scavenger hunt. I really love scavenger hunts. Not only do they get children moving, but they're really great for problem solving in a tangible way. And you can customize your scavenger hunt to fit any ability or any interest. You can have them indoors as well as outdoors. You can make it as long or as short. It can be a team project, any way you want to do it. Next slide. Literacy, it can occur in the bathroom too. It's just not a book that you take to the bathroom. It can be in the bathtub. When I'm looking at that picture, I'm thinking about alphabet soup in the bathtub. So get some of those foam letters, take them to the bathroom, put them in the bathtub, and give it a try.
Daisy says, I painted the bottom half of a wall in my boys' room, and we did letters of the day. As they aged, we did words of the day. And Donna says, hopscotch with spelling words or sight words on the driveway. Donna says, also, I spy something with my pretty little eyes.
That's great. That's great. And you can do, I hear something with my ear as well. So that's good too.
And Daisy says, in addition, that when they did words of the day on the painting the bottom half, they used chalk. They used chalk paint. And I see. Morgan says that he's not, or she's not seeing a lot of the comments, and that's because some of you Donna, I think you need to like do all panelists and attendees. And Maggie, I'm just calling you out, only Deanne, I'm calling you out because we love your comments and we love everybody to be able to see them, because when I start reading things
Yes.
and people don't know where they come from, it's easier for people to learn that way. Yeah, Morgan says, I don't want to miss the good ideas. And sometimes orally, it helps people to be able to read them. So that's a good thing for literacy, right?
That's literacy, right, Kathy? You got it.
Yeah. So it's the second one down, all panelists and attendees. And that way everybody can see what you do instead of just hearing me read it.
And I just had a thought, Kathy, closed captioning, put it on the TV.
Oh, that's a good idea too, yeah.
I mean, that can help literacy too. Okay, this one, I know it looks really strange. Write the pantry, but what you can do is get a piece of paper and put different letters of the alphabet on them, and then open up that pantry door and let the child find words that start with that letter. They can read the label or read the front of the box or the can, and they'll write them down, and then you all can talk about them later.
Donna says flashcards for words, word definitions, and play around the world in the living room.
Wow, around the world. I wonder what, can you tell me what around the world is? If you could put that in the chat box, I would love that. Okay, and until she does that, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next slide. So environmental print. You know, our world is full of print, whether you're walking, riding, or just passing by something, you always see signs and logos. And environmental print is nothing but print for your everyday life. It could be on a candy wrapper, it could be the McDonald's sign, it could be Target. So what you can do with that, you can cut out some of those environmental print, and then you can make an environmental print book. You can talk about letter recognition, counting the letters, looking at the beginning sounds, looking at syllables. And I've also seen it where you can just paste them on a sheet of paper and you can just have them, or you write the words, I can read, and then you put that piece of environmental print up there. So I can read Barbie, I can read Lego, I can read Pizza Hut. So that could get them going with the reading.
What this is reminding me of also, Tanya, is when we would take car trips, like all the games that we used to play in the car, like we'd play an alphabet game that you had to find a sign that started with A and the next person with B and the next person with C, like that. And we'd also play geography, which was, you know, you have to come up with the name of a place. We were a little older at this point, but come up with the name of a place. Like if Alabama, that's a bad example. Like Alabama, somebody say Alabama, it ends with A. I could say Albany, that ends with Y. The next person has to say one that starts with Y. Yuba City, that also starts with Y. You know, like York, England. You know, and then we would do that, or just there was another game we called Ghost, but I don't remember what that was. I wondered if Donna wanted to raise her hand to tell us about around the world, because I am curious what around the world is.
Me too. While we're waiting on her.
Yeah, Donna's here.
Hey, Donna.
So Donna's raised her hand, so she's unmuted. Donna, you could unmute yourself and then tell us what around the world is.
Okay, around the world is you play in your living room or any room, and it can be a very small space if you need to. You know, put different countries. You say, okay, you're going to all of these different countries around the world, depending on how many words you have. We used to use like the couch and the chair and the little spot next to it and go around. And if they got it right, they got to go to the next country. If they get it wrong, they have to go to the country before they have to go back to the country they came from. And my kids used to be so upset because if they got it wrong, they'd have to go back to the country, and they'd be so excited when they got to travel around the whole room, around the whole world, we'd say. And then they got to the final destination that they were going to if they got them all right. And that's how we would play. And then we would start over just with the ones that they missed. and then they'd have to go. And they were like, I'd say, and then I'd hold up the flashcards and I'd say, no, I'd put the flashcard down. That means they miss it. And they'd be like, oh, I don't want to go back to the country. So I played it with my kids in my class, and it was so fun. And they thought it was a game, but they were really learning all the different, meanings to the words or how to spell them or whatever you use it for. You just use like index cards and put the stuff on it.
That's so great. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for sharing that. And be sure to, one more in the chat. Deanna says, I used license plates to learn capitals of the various states. We love it. We have a bunch of teachers on here, I think. And people are always looking for new games. So it's great. If you have a game and you want to share it like Donna did, that would be awesome. You can raise your hand.
That would be. All right, next slide, Kathy. What about literacy in the kitchen? Does anybody have any ideas on what you can do to promote literacy in the kitchen? And if you could, please put that in the chat real quick. And while you're doing that, putting that in the chat, we're gonna go to the next slide. Outdoor literacy. Literacy can happen outdoors as well. I don't know if you can recognize that first picture, but what they did was take the cookie cutters and they put mud in it. So when you're outside, you can take the cookie cutters outside. You need to have probably outdoor cookie cutters and then the indoor ones, but the outdoor ones can be used for mud. And if you can look on right where you see that little pan, that's some mud in there, and that can become like a writing tray. So you can have all different types of literacy games that you take outside or have outside. Next slide. You can go on a literacy walk. And a literacy walk can be just an opportunity where you're outside walking and you can incorporate some of the things we talked about. You can incorporate the I Spy. You can incorporate environmental trends. You can incorporate just basically talking about things that you see in nature. Okay, next slide. I didn't have anybody say anything for the kitchen, but I know already we've been talking about things that you can do in the car while you're driving on long trips. But there's some things that you can do on short trips as well. So if anybody wants to chime in with something else that you can do on the car trip for literacy, that would be great. But I've got another one that I want to share.
I'll do one for the kitchen, Tanja, which is
okay, great.
Recipe books, like a cookbook, like especially kids cookbook, and go through to read to be able to make something. The pantry one you could do in the kitchen as well. Or you could use obviously you could use flashcards and whatever anywhere, but the one I thought of mostly was recipes.
That would be great.
Also the refrigerator, the I Spy with the milk, that kind of thing, or the treasure hunt. All of these, those are like not necessarily room specific, but
right.
Reading the recipe kitchen has math literacy opportunity also, Maggie says. Math literacy because you're measuring. You can teach measuring, and
sequential order.
And also you can teach the counting, like how many plates do we have? How many forks do we have? Like you could teach that too there.
Right. And you can get as complex or simple as it needs to be based upon your child and their needs. So the next slide shares one activity you can do while you're just riding the car, and it's called Top 10. Now you can do 10, or maybe based upon your child's age or interest, you might do 5, you might do 2. So like this might be the top 10 things that a monster would do on the weekend. You ask that question, the child will come up with 10 things, or top 10 things you could change if you were the president. So it kind of gets that conversation going, because we know that talking is teaching, and them sharing information, that's priceless.
So Donna says, Donna says in the car, You can spell all the words you see when traveling, such as stop signs, stores, streets, etc. You can also put on index cards and practice words while riding. And Julie says, when cooking, tell them the next thing we need for our recipe starts with the letter E and state the sound. Morgan says, I have Ted's fridge phonics on my fridge in the kitchen. My kiddo is also playing it with it when I'm in the kitchen cooking. And I was thinking, you have not only we saw the letters on the fridge, but there's also those poetry ones. You know, those magnetic poetry. So you can kind of create sentences or odd sentences with words. Those kinds of things.
And you don't.
It's also a great time to have a child read to you.
Oh, that's a great idea.
To all panelists and attendees, because I'm the only one that saw that. But it's a great time to have a child read to you while you're cooking.
That is,
and I guess great. And then Donna says, let them measure stuff for you in the kitchen. I think there's also the whole thing about, you know, I remember when my son was young, like sometimes we would stop the book and then he would write the ending, or like I was writing a book with, like, for him, with him. So I would like write a chapter, which was only a page, put him on my lap and read it to him. And then he would make comments about how it should go next time, or how it would, we could edit it, how it would be better, you know? And that was another kind of game we played, and it's bonding too, like, you know.
Exactly. That's a great. Next slide. So, you know, all of this comes back to talking and how talking is teaching, and anything can be a prompt for it. I mean, and it can happen any place, anytime, doing chores. One thing I like about talking is that we need to be a commentator when we're doing things. So we can talk through different activities that we're doing. To say, for instance, you're fixing the car. You can talk about the different parts you're using, what you're doing, what's coming next. When you're changing diapers, talk to the baby and talk about, well, I'm about to do this, or about to do that, or just did this, or, you know, all that is important, and it all helps to support literacy and oral language.
You know, what I did with literacy and oral language was big words. Like we would have, you know, guess what the word beverage means, you know, like if they knew drink, but they didn't know beverage, or they knew, this is hard, but what do you think the word difficult means? You know, or like teach words. Now you can't do it like word after, it would be like one big word a day, one interesting big word a day, because you wouldn't want to like bombard, but words that sound cool also, like sarsaparilla or sassafras, or something that has like an interesting sound that you know expands their vocabulary, because that's one of the oral literacy, like the literacy, how many words do you know, is an important thing. And you get words from reading, but you also get words just from talking.
Right. And just once you read a book and you come across some of those, that rich vocabulary, new words that a child hadn't heard, you know, maybe put those up on the refrigerator or something like that, so you can come back to it. So it's just not like a hit and miss thing. Oh yeah, we talked about it when we read the story, and then there's no more talk about it. So that would be a good opportunity to go back and discuss that word, and, you know, use it in some sentences over the course of the next days or weeks. So I think that'd be great. And then, you know, back in the day, I don't know, if everybody was at around the dinner table for a discussion, but the dinner table can be a good time where everybody can talk. You can talk about your day. You could talk about some things that were going on in your child's day. Let that child set the pace and you follow the lead. You can share stories about what happened to you when you were a young child. If you can't think of anything to talk about, the next slide will give you an idea of something you can do. It's called a chit chat jar. And in the chit chat jar, you can just put some conversation starters in there. And then maybe you can pull from the chit chat jar prior to your meal. And after you read that, then over the course of the meal, that might get the conversation going. So it's a good way to
Maggie says one aspect of the challenges with children is teaching competition teaching that competition is with yourself, not always against others. So a growth mindset for reluctant readers or participants. Dinner time is a more equitable time to share. So I guess, what does that look like? Maggie, do you want to raise your hand and talk more about that concept? Because, and what that looks like, how you encourage competition with yourself, that would be great. So Jahira's going to unmute you, and then you'll need to unmute yourself because there is still a red. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I work with families, and sometimes parents talk about their children not wanting to participate in a conversation with them for fear of getting something wrong. And to encourage that aspect that they're trying to gain more for themselves and maybe not against others. So if you've got like older siblings in the room or something, if we're talking about being at home in the family, sometimes it's overwhelming to the child. And so actually that growth mindset where you said, you know, you've got a good point there. What about this? I never thought of that. So encouraging any of the children that are reluctant to participate and who might see it as a competition amongst others so that they're not, that they're more shy about it, is important when we're always engaging with asking questions and things and enticing them to answer is what I was thinking.
Thank you. Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't think about that. That's a great point. Okay. Go to the next slide. Singing. You know, another easy way to get children ready to read is to sing to them. You know, it helps to introduce new words. A lot of the songs tell stories. There's some narrative skills in there. And it also gives them awareness of sound. And remember, with young children, they don't care how you sound when you sing. Maybe your older children do, but the younger children don't care. So that's something that you can incorporate. Next slide. And you can make up songs. If you don't know, nursery rhymes are another one. They're similar to songs with a language acquisition and spatial development, and helps with the auditory skills. It helps them discriminate sounds, and it's good for their vocabulary as well as their memory. And it's something that a lot of people do in all the nursery rhymes. A lot of people, as time has gone on, they kind of gotten away from nursery rhymes, so we need to incorporate nursery rhymes more. Next slide.
Elda says singing along in the car too. And I know my granddad used to have us singing when we were washing and drying the dishes, when we would go up to visit, like in the summers and stuff. They had a practice of like singing, and my granddad, like, he would be singing songs that we didn't know because they were old songs. You know, they were like old classics. So it was kind of a way of intergenerational too, you know.
And one thing I like, just for your older children, for some songs, you know how now they have the lyrics to all the songs, like on my Apple Music, you know, you can just click lyrics and you've got all the lyrics. So you can sing along, and that can help you with your literacy as well, because you got the lyrics to read as you're singing. So that might help you with your fluency as well. Okay. Tongue twisters, they're a great way to practice sounds. Next slide. Finger play. You know, finger play is basically using your fingers as part of a song or a story. So it helps a lot with oral language. So I want everybody to listen to the short clip that uses finger play, and it kind of discusses how it can be beneficial to children. So play that would be wonderful.
Here's an early literacy tip using the when we format, looking at finger plays and how that supports writing. Okay? So first we're going to do the finger play, and it's called the Beehive. So first, let me see all your little bees. Those are your fingers. Good. And now we're going to make the beehive where the bees live. So we're going to fold down all our fingers and then put our thumb across. Very good. So now you have your beehive. Here is the beehive, but where are the bees? They're hidden inside where nobody sees. Watch out, here they come out of their hive. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bzzz. And then we do the finger play again. My tip to the parents is this. Adults, when we do these finger plays, we're helping children to develop their small motor skills, the muscles that they need for later writing. So these finger plays are fun, and they're also helping prepare children to write.
So something like that, Kathy, I think that would be really good if you could share with families a little pocket. I consider that like a pocket PD, something that's really short that you can email families, that can show them activities they can do with their families, with the children, and it's also something that explains the why. How is this beneficial to children? So any kind of way that you can kind of let families see some literacy activities that they can do at home, that would be great. And something like that, a short clip that either you make or you find on the internet that's right for your families, that would be great to share. Yeah.
So Lovey's asking if we can put the video link in the chat. I think Jahira can probably do that. But I was thinking there is a lot of times a popular way of getting information, like little bits of information. You could have a text group, and people could opt in, and then you could just once a day text a little video or text a little, or once a week or whatever you wanted to do. But like most people have phones where they might not have like a computer, or they might not be really interested in reading a long email or whatever. But if you text them like a 1 minute, of the day, that would be something.
That's a good idea. Great idea. All right, next slide.
I'll try to put that video link in the chat, but I bet if you Googled I Love You Rituals, Maggie says, I Love You Rituals by Becky A. Bailey are finger plays to build connection between family members. They change traditional rhymes into more loving rhymes and connections. You'll also find videos on YouTube and Instagram under Conscious Discipline. We used to do, here is the church, here is the steeple, open the doors and see all the people. I remember that one. And Deanne says she's also recorded herself reading a story and sent it to my grandchildren. Oh, that's so lovely.
It's
so lovely.
Great, that's great. If we could go back one slide, I think the opposite way. Let's see, go forward one, because I think we missed one. Oh, there it is. Make it a family affair. Sometimes if you're a teacher or you're working with families, give them a project that they'll have to do as a family, a literacy project they'll have to do as a family. Not just something that the child has to do on their own, but try to have a project where the whole family has to work together.
I hated that. I'm just telling you. As a parent, I hated that. I thought, how presumptuous it is of a teacher to give me homework. Really? My kid can't do well unless I, what, they don't know what my schedule is. They don't know how busy I am. I want to be able to do my things with my children when I want to. So how would you respond to a parent that says that?
I think you have to be cognizant of how big the project is, if it's something small. And I like to, when I was doing stuff like that, I like to spread it over time so you don't feel so pushed that I have got to do it tonight. You might be a weekend project. It might be a project that they share at the end of the week. So that's how I would do it. And it would be something that would be short and simple. And I would, my hope is that they could, as time go on, replicate it on their own. Okay.
Dahira did put the video in the chat, that YouTube video for you all.
Great. The next slide, please. Scrapbooking. A lot of times we do scrapbooking, but have you ever thought about a family scrapbook where you could take some pictures, or you can take some mementos from a place you went or something you did, and then put them in your scrapbook, and then together, either you, if you know, depends on your child's age and ability level, you might write some things out, or let the child write out a description, or you know, of what the activity was, who that person is, anything like that, and you can keep a scrapbook of some good times that you shared, or some people that you know.
Yeah, we did. We do actually a trauma-informed parenting class for foster parents and birth parents in the child welfare system on life books, which I think could also be something that was expanded beyond that context. But like a life book for a child that chronicles their life, and they get to add to it, and they get to, you know, write what's going on at this, you know, for them, and include things that are important to them at that age, you know.
Right. Oh, that's good idea. That's good. Next slide. You do a, you know, it's kind of similar to that family journal.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the child could write the things down, and then you know, that next time they come to the journal, they can go back and kind of review some of the things and read some of the information that they wrote for journal. Okay. Next slide. And it could be for, you know, it could be a family journal, or it could be one just specific for the children. Next slide.
I love that picture of the journal, because in that one, you're encouraging art and other ways to record experience than words too, which I think is important, like to be able to draw a picture or I used to love when I was a kid, the what are they called? The stamps, like, you know, stamp pads. They still have them, like rubber stamp, and be able to do that. And Maggie says her family had a gratitude journal. That's a fabulous idea. I've heard of individual gratitude journals, but that's a fabulous idea for a family gratitude journal.
That is. Thank you for that one too. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, let me talk about this one. Of course, reading books. You know, I can never say enough about reading with and to children. It's one of the most important things that families can do for literacy. And not only do you get all these different skills that you see on here, but it's a time for modeling. It's a time for bonding with your child. It's a time for learning, and it promotes the language and the literacy and your brain development. So it's just like a win-win. And like my session I did last week, you don't stop when they get older. When they get old enough to read, you don't stop there. I think most people love to hear a good story read to them. Maybe you might read a chapter here or read a book, whatever. Reading to children of all ages is important for literacy. Next slide. And, you know, books, we talked about having books in the home. You can also make your own books as well. You know, you can purchase those blank books. I think Target, you can get a pack of blank books, maybe $3 for a pack of 10. But you can also just take some paper, maybe legal size paper, and get a stapler and fold it up, and get some construction paper and make your own books. They can be concept books like ABC books, counting books, or they can be ones where they actually tell a story, make up their own stories. So have children make their own books. work on a book together. And then you can have a publishing party at the end. Once they've made some books, you can have a publishing party and share them with everybody. Next slide. Puppets. I love puppets. Puppets, why not? You can take Barbie dolls, toys, and they can become puppets. Or you can make some handmade puppets using some things around the house. And puppet shows are a great way to promote literacy as well as creativity. Children can create their own stories. They can retell stories from books that they read or books that you read to them. And it also gives them a chance to role play, which is going to help with their oral language. Next slide. Memorizing. A lot of times children don't get a chance to memorize things too much anymore. So, memorizing, maybe you might have people in your family might get a section of a poem and everybody memorizes a part, or you might have a little production at home where everybody has a little poem or a little Bible verse or a quote or something that they memorize. And it's something about performing a poem that you've memorized. It's sort of like acting. You know, you learn your physical presence. You have to know how to use your voice. It's about articulation. It's about your speed when you're talking, your volume and your tone. And it's a great activity. And then you'll always remember those things that you learned. I remember some of my speeches from, when I was 8 years old, 10 years old. Next slide. Family game night. You can learn so much about literacy through playing games. So you can purchase some games like Scrabble or Pictionary. You can do those kind of games, or you can create your own games for literacy. And if you could, in the chat box, if you know of any good games that will promote literacy for children of any age, can you please put that in the chat? I know you all have some great ideas. I know they do. Next slide. Variations like go fish. You can change it up and put sight words on index cards or alphabets, and it can be go fish with sight words or alphabet. Next slide. Or you can play like sight word tic-tac-toe, or a twist on the memory game can become the big alphabet memory game, where if children are working on trying to identify letters. Okay, next slide. And I talked about this last week, a family book club. Family book club is, I said Oprah does it. Why can't we do it at home as well? Where you select a book. It can be a picture book, it can be a chapter book. It just kind of depends on your family structure. And everyone gets a chance to read the book. Even your extended family might be part of your book club. If it's younger children, you might read the book to the child. And you all sit, after you've done that, you sit around and you talk about the book. You might do an activity based upon the book over a nice meal. Family book club. Next slide. And then TV. TV is not always a bad thing. If you watch it together, it can be a great opportunity to discuss things like asking questions about what happened in the TV show that you watched. It might be some retelling. You might talk about some of the themes or the morals or some of the motivations the character had. You can also talk about how you would change the ending. All of these can be done while watching television programs together. Next slide. Writing at home. Writing boosts reading and reading boosts writing, and those two should be done hand in hand. And writing materials like pencils and pens and markers and chalk, and all of these, construction paper, all of these things should be at home and accessible to children. Next slide. Label it. When children are drawing pictures, next time, label some of the things that are in their pictures, okay? All right, those are great ones, Kathy.
Well, I know we had a lot of family Boggle and Scrabble, and playing the children's version is fun also, but it kind of like, the thing is they would see in my family, they would see the adults playing. And so then, and they couldn't participate in the adult one as much because those were really competitive, but they want to play because the adults were playing, like what you were saying in terms of modeling. So getting their own version, and then Boggle is something that, we would play with kids, and then the adults would play also by themselves. So.
And Hangman, I forgot all about Hangman. I used to love playing Hangman. You learn a lot of skills through Hangman. Yes.
Yeah, it's like watching Wheel of Fortune, like Wheel of Fortune is basically,
Yes.
Hangman.
It's basically what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, but I was thinking about that because I know we're talking about like print rich, and there's also a lot like I see Daisy's putting, I watch YouTube videos of the electric company with my grand loves, in Sesame Street, and there's a lot of literacies. There are a lot of digital, also like games and words with friends. And I mean, there's just a lot of games that online that or apps that promote literacy,
Exactly. Next slide. We're coming around the mountain. So writing letters, I mean, it's like a lost art with people. Why don't you encourage your child to write a letter? Next time they're talking about their Nana, why don't you say, hey, let's sit down and write a letter to Nana. And maybe, you'll take the dictation or let the child write and you help them write. That'll be a great way. And then ask that person to respond back via a letter, okay? Next slide. The top list or the things they have to do as well. Maybe they can write their own list. They might have a to-do list for the week. Next slide.
Well, the shopping list thing is also like, you can do that. They whether you make your own like shopping list and check things off, or sometimes they have pads of those things, or you just make a list. That's also going through the grocery store. That's a fun game. Like you can go, what's this? This is peanut butter. Go get the peanut, like depending on how old the child is, like they can go search for things in the grocery store, and find them, which is,
And then for the younger ones, they can use a picture. Yeah. Sensory words, you can still do some pre-writing activities by using, like that's the salt tray, the sprinkles, shaving cream, all of those, and then Play-Doh. Next slide.
See, one more thing about that grocery store thing. The other thing you do is when you're shopping with a child is what I would do is I would ask them to like man the list and tell me what's next. And then we would go to the place to find what's next. And then I would have them, check it off, so that they have a job and they're feeling like they're important for the thing to happen together, So that's another idea.
That's a good idea. I'm going to go to the next slide because I know time is almost up. And I do want to share this video. And afterwards, I have 30 seconds afterwards. If we might only be able to get a minute in it of it, Kathy.
It's okay. So what you need to do. I don't need much time at the end.
Okay. Was this 5 minutes?
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Korak. Lots of you know me from coming to the East Lansing Public Library. And I am a children's librarian here. And outside of the library, I am also a professional storyteller. I'm going to talk with you today about 5 things you can do to prepare for telling a story and doing it the best way that you can. You always want to do your best. The first part we're going to talk about is your voice. And your voice is the most important tool you have as a storyteller. You're going to want to think about your voice in a slightly different way than you usually do. You talk all day long with your friends and your family, and you probably don't think a lot about your voice. But as a storyteller, you have to think about your voice and you want to pay attention to it. So we want to think about the volume of our voice, how loud we're talking when we tell a story. We want to think about how quickly we're talking, slowly enough so the audience can absorb what they're hearing from you. It's very important too. So the second thing you really want to think about, number 2, as a storyteller, is that you want to pay very close attention to the content of your story, or what your story is about. In this case, what we are proposing to you or asking you to do is to tell a story from your own life. So you don't need to learn someone else's story. You don't need to make up a story with characters that you have to remember. You're going to tell a story about yourself from your own life. So that makes it a little bit easier to think about what you are using as content for your story. Number 3 is to know the parts of a story. So when I get ready to tell a story, I don't memorize a story. I don't have to remember certain words and certain things that happened at certain times in the story, because what happens if I do that is I spend time looking at the floor while I'm telling a story, or looking at the ceiling, or thinking, oh, what happens next? I can't remember. And then I'm distracted, and getting distracted while you're telling a story makes it very difficult for the audience to listen to you. So you don't need to think about memorizing anything. What you want to think about is how the story starts, what happens in the middle, and how the story ends. So one thing I do as a storyteller is I make a map for myself. I draw a map on a piece of paper, and I have circles with arrows that go between them that show me what happens when. I also have a list of characters in the story, and I think about it that way. So I know the big things that have to happen in the story, and I know the order in which they happen, and that's all I really need to remember. Part number 4 is taking care of your audience, and you want to think very carefully about who is listening to you. When you tell a story to your friends on the playground, you're probably going to tell that story very differently than maybe you tell that story to your parents, or you tell that story to your grandparents, or you tell that story, you might even tell the same story differently to different friends. So you need to think about who is listening to your story. You're not telling a story just for yourself, you're telling a story for an audience. That way, your story doesn't sound like a speech to the audience, and it doesn't sound like something you memorized, because it's more like hanging out with your friends and sharing a story with them. Another way to take care of your audience is to think about how your story is going to end, to consider what you want your audience to remember about your story. What is important about your story? And why does your story matter to you? You want to be ready for your ending and prepared for it so that your story doesn't end with the end. Just think about when the people walk away from you, what you want them to remember about the story that you told. So that also helps us think a little bit about part number 5, which is to prepare for your story. The best way is to tell your story to your friends, and tell your story to your family, and tell your story to your teachers and your grandparents. You can come to the library and tell stories to librarians. Lots of people will want to listen to your story, but the more you tell it, the easier it will be for you to share it and to feel comfortable. So those are my 5 things I wanted to share with you, and I hope that they help you get ready for telling a story and feeling just absolutely great about it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, Jahira needs to launch the poll, put the link in the chat, and I think, Tunja, are you done?
Yes, I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
Valentine's Day is coming up. Happy Valentine's to everyone. That's a great opportunity for literacy. Children can make cards. You can buy the people you love, your children, books. And I hope everybody has a great Valentine's Day. And thank you so much, as always. I always have too much, and I always talk too much, but thank you all.
We're grateful for you, Tunja, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Can you just go, Jahira, to the and all of her slides will be available on the website after this. So you'll be able to see all of them and have all these great ideas for the future. Lovey loved the session. Thank you so much. I just want to say, join us tomorrow. We're going to talk about how will COVID end? When will COVID end? We're going to have like a freewheeling conversation about the vaccine with me and Sarita and my sister, Lisa Getz-Fitko, who is a certified nurse. She's a nurse practitioner, has a master's in nursing, and she's been providing women's health care for 30 years. So she talks to a lot of patients and explains things about the vaccine, but it's not, we're not saying that we're giving definitive information. We just think it's like good to be able to have a conversation about it. And then next week, we're kicking off with a session on Black history, which is celebrating family and community sustainability. And Alexandra is going to be leading that with me. And then on Wednesday, Lori Myron Manbeck will be here, and she's going to be talking about aging, elders, and the pandemic. Terry will be back on Thursday for more sustainability. And then Tunja will be back next Friday supporting math skills at home. So join us for all or one, and we look forward to seeing you. And I'm just going to end here because it's 1:03. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Tunja, again. And we will see you next time. Okay?